Allow me to extend a warm welcome to all the viewers on the internet and around the world. It is sunrise on YouTube, morning on Facebook, noon on Twitter, midday on Threads, afternoon on Twitch, sunset on Instagram, and evening on Rumble. I am your host, the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, the Phantom Menace, he who remains, and the master of the deceptive arts. We are broadcasting live directly from the sanctum of solitude and the citadel at the end of time. Good evening, everyone. It's the Ancient One again, the Bachelor Supreme, the master of the deceptive arts. And I'd like to talk about some of the deceptive arts that are in the world today and discuss them in a way as to expose some of the critical issues of today. You'll see in the screen, this is from an article that I intend to read a little bit later. It says, in a growing share of U.S. marriages, this is the title, husbands and wives earn about the same. The caption below, even when earnings are similar, husbands spend more time on paid work and leisure while wives devote more time to caregiving and housework. This is an article by Richard Fry, Carolina Aragua, forgive my pronunciation if I got that wrong, Kylie Hurst, and Kim Parker. I thought, before we get into all the details, we've had enough time travel for this week and analyzed many of our own past mistakes. But what I wanted to do today is to dive into the dark dimension itself, into the marriage itself, and look at what is the reality of marriage. And in particular, what we're going to do is, remove the veil, right? And show the real disparity, the true disparity in labor at home. And what I'm going to demonstrate today is how tragically downplayed, the extremity of how a man's effort is downplayed, and how a woman's effort or the counterpart's effort is played up so much and exaggerated to the extreme, right? Specifically when it comes to this so-called labor of division in the home, right? So this article, while it's quite accurate in its details, it is very biased in its description, right? So and we'll pick apart some parts of it or specific parts of it to demonstrate this. But what ultimately it will show is that these type of articles are deliberately upholding women's failures, right? But also they are inadvertently exposing those failures, right? So things that will be exposed in this article are like the failure of economic feminism. And for those that are familiar with feminism, you'll know that it really started as an economic movement where women wanted to be in the workplace, but felt that there was a structural system that was deliberately biased against them, forcing them into the home, which meant into marriages that may or may not benefit them when they felt that they were capable. Not only capable, they were willing to do the work equal to men. So it's going to demonstrate a failure of that. It's also going to demonstrate a failure of the modern boss babe movement, the I don't need no man movement, right? We're going to just show how that has completely fallen off its face. But this information is not readily given, right? It's there, but it's not readily given. So you really have to dissect it to get to what's really being said in these numbers, right? But mostly, what this thing is going to demonstrate is an absolute failure of the institution of marriage, an institution, as you know, that I detest. And for this reason, I recommend that every bachelor get themselves a vasectomy. Don't forget that vasectomy. You'll be hearing it every day. Get yourself a vasectomy and stay out of that marriage institution. Nothing good is going to come from that, and I'm going to show it. I'm going to show it right now, right? So one of the things is really that there's a disparity in the description and the diction that they use, right? And diction is word choice. There's also disparity in the tone and ultimately the deductive reasoning, right? So they'll give you all this information that seems to lean one way, and then they'll make a conclusion that goes completely the opposite way, right? And they'll justify that conclusion by just the narrowest of margins, just the tiniest advantage, and they'll grab it and run to it. And I'm going to expose that now, right? So when we read this article, we're going to, not only just dissect the author's words, but we're going to search for their true meaning, right? And then compare those assertions with our own, right? But what I want to do is, before we get into the articles themselves, I want to start by defining two words or two phrases, right? The first one is yard work, and the second one is household repairs. Now, it's difficult to use the very infamous Google machine and find, and I searched for this, a list of household tasks that men do. What comes up is this information here where it says, well, women do the majority of the household work, and they stop right there. They don't elaborate for the man in any way, but they'll give you all kinds of descriptions for the women. So what you have to do is give a very specific search, and I did that. I went to find what yard work is, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment, and what household repairs are. So on the screen now, you'll see that we have the first definition of what yard work is. Am I correct? Yes, I am. Right. So just to mention before we get into this, right, is that when we start reading the article, right, the article makes no mention of these things, right, at all, or these tasks, or their costs, or how long they take to do. So keep that in mind, but also ask yourself, number one, who enjoys these things more? So who spends more time in the yard, right? It would obviously be the kids playing if you're married with kids. And ask yourselves then, in household repairs, who breaks most of those things? So who uses them the most, and then who breaks them the most? And what you'll find is that it's the man doing most of the yard work, caring for it, if not doing it himself, overseeing it, so paying someone to do it. And then it's the family that gets to enjoy the benefits of that, right? And if he doesn't, it's the family that suffers the consequences of having to live in a yard that's not cared for, in a house that has broken or dysfunctional things, right? So let's do it. Yard work, it says here, refers to the tasks involved in maintaining and caring for the outdoor areas around the home, such as lawns, gardens, and other landscaped spaces. It encompasses a range of activities aimed at keeping these areas neat, healthy, and visually appealing. Examples of yard work include lawn care. This is mowing the lawn, edging, fertilizing, and watering the lawn, right? So these tasks alone can be done. This is one day of work, one day of work, one day of work, one day of work, right? This isn't all done in a single day, right? These are four different tasks that require several different days to do. Some of these can take several days to complete. Like, depending on the size of your yard, mowing it can take a day or two, right? So keep that in mind and then take into consideration the difficulty and the physical labor of this. Let's continue. You have gardening, the second task, which includes planting, weeding, pruning, and tending to the flower beds and vegetable gardens. So if you've got if you've ever done any type of gardening, you will understand that it is an everyday thing. So if it rains, you have to be aware of that and you can't water your plants too much. Or you have to move the plants. If it doesn't rain and your plants dry out or get dehydrated, then they die. So you have to keep monitoring them on a daily basis. Another task, completely undermined. Then we have landscaping, which is the general maintenance and upkeep of the yard, including trimming the trees and the shrubs, removing debris, and maintaining pathways and other features, right? Driveways, those pathways on the side of the house, right? Grass grows on those things all year round, right? And all year round, you have to keep up that maintenance. At the bottom, it says other tasks. These include raking the leaves, cleaning up after pets. Yes, let's not forget the pets. Those pets are an everyday chore, an every single day chore. And it's not just about walking the thing. You got to clean up after it. You got to feed it. You got to make sure it doesn't get sick. You got to make sure it gets its daily exercise, right? The article mentions none of these things at all, right? Let's continue. And preparing outdoor spaces for various uses. So if you're having like a party or something or a celebration, you want to use the outside, guess who's taking care of that? The husband. Yard work is often seen as a way to enhance the overall appearance and the value of the property, as well as providing a pleasant outdoor environment. So not only is this important, it could prove profitable in the end. So a good yard means eventually if you decide to sell or move, you can do so in a profitable way. If you're renting and you maintain the space when you leave, it means you get your deposit back, or at least a larger portion of your deposit back, right? But these are tasks that are extremely difficult to do, consume a tremendous amount of time, right? But are so valuable and so important, not just to the value of the space, but to the general living of the home, and they are completely ignored. All your efforts are completely ignored, right? And this is something that we're going to demonstrate further when we look at what are household repairs. So, household repairs is quite a large sort of category of housework. So, we're going to have to split it up into two screens. But the first one says household repairs involve maintaining and fixing various aspects of a home to ensure it remains in good condition and functions properly, right? This can include fixing leaks, repairing electrical issues, addressing plumbing problems, or even handling larger projects like roof repairs or foundation issues. Just imagine that. Just imagine that litany of tasks and all the little details that go into doing it. My goodness. Homeowners often tackle some repairs themselves, while others may require the expertise of professionals. So if you're not doing it yourself, you got to pay somebody expensive to do it. And while we go through these lists, just remember these are actual jobs done by actual professionals, and the people who do these jobs, they earn six-figure salaries, right? If they do this in the United States, they earn six-figure salaries every year. These are among some of the richest people in the world, right? Common household repairs include plumbing, and this contains or consists of rather leaking faucets, running toilets, clogged drains, which are always clogged if you've ever lived with a counterpart. And I think they clog them on purpose. I really think they do. Um, and pipe repairs are frequent plumbing issues, right? Not just the repairs, the replacement. Then you get the electrical. There is faulty wiring, broken outlets, light fixtures, repair for under electric work. You also have the smoke detectors. So the battery goes out, you gotta replace that. Um, then you have the HVAC, which is the air conditioning and heating system maintenance, and repairs are crucial and expensive, especially in extreme climates, like certain parts of the United States that tend to suffer severe snow and all kinds of extreme weather conditions, right? So you're going to need your plumbing, you're going to need your electrical, you're going to need your heating and your cooling, right? And this is all what the man does. This is all what the man does. And they make it seem like these are occasional tasks that happen from time to time. No, these are daily occurrences. So you go from fixing the plumbing to fixing the electrical to fixing the air, right? And we'll see what else you're going to fix in the next list. Next on the list of tasks that men do but get absolutely no recognition for is roofing, right? So this will include addressing leaks, replacing damaged shingles, and repairing the entire roof are essential for protecting the home. Next is the foundation, so the floors, cracks, settling or upheaval in the foundation can compromise the structural integrity of the house and should be addressed promptly. This is absolutely true. If you have a problem in the foundation, you need to take care of that immediately. Siding, repairing damaged siding, addressing water stains, and dealing with mold or peeling paint are important for maintaining the exterior of the home. This also happens in the interior, right? So you got to paint that house every ever so often, every few years. But if something really like stains the wall, then you have no choice but to paint that wall. And in truth, you're not just going to paint the stain, you have to paint the whole wall. That's what they don't tell you. You have to paint the entire wall. Then we have doors and windows. It says here sticking or damaged doors and windows can be a safety and comfort issue. This is true. So you don't want your doors hanging off the hinges. You don't want them squeaking when you're opening them. You don't want them not being able to lock or not being able to close. Then we have appliances. Oh, so many appliances, right? Repairing or replacing malfunctioning appliances like refrigerators, washing machines, dishwashers, if often is often necessary, kettles, toasters, and so on. Right, the list never ends. In fact, your house is mainly full of just appliances that if they break, you first try and fix them, and then when you soon realize that you can't, then you have to buy all new ones. Right. And as the man, you'll be responsible for that. And then finally, it says here general maintenance. This include tasks like painting, patching holes in the wall. Yes, so you patch the hole, then you got to paint the whole wall. It says caulking. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not really a maintenance type of guy. And then maintaining gutters. Oh, yes, I forgot about the gutters. Oh, you got to clean those gutters. almost every time that it rains, or when the leaves start falling, when it gets dusty, man, you have to clean gutters all the time. You're up on those ladders all the time. And you have to understand that the counterpart believes in truth that this is part of husband duties. So you're supposed to do this anyway, and go to work and take care of the kids and cook and clean and help her with whatever she needs over and above all of these tasks, right? So this is the part of the marriage disparity, right? When they say that there's unfair division of labor. And I assure you, you will get no help when it comes to roofing or fixing foundations. Maybe she'll help you paint the wall. Very likely you'll have to do the majority of that, right? So keep all this in mind when we get into the article titled "In a Growing Share of U.S. Marriages, Husbands and Wife Earn About the Same," right? So we're going to have a look at that too, and we're going to or debunk, rather, I apologize for that, debunk this myth. To refresh your eyes, I'll put this back up on the screen. It says, in a growing share of U.S. marriages, husbands and wives earn about the same. Caption, even when earnings are similar, husbands spend more time on paid work and leisure. Leisure, that's how they describe all those things that I just went through. They call it leisure. Relaxing time spent away from work, often traveling. That's the definition of leisure. And all those things that I just described, the yard work, the roofing, the plumbing, the electrical, the lawn, the gardening, the landscapes, the general maintenance, the foundation, the doors, the windows, they describe that as leisure, right? This is what I meant by that this article is extremely biased, right? Then they continue to say, while wives devote, listen to that word, devote, right? To throw yourself passionately, spiritually, mentally, and physically into your task. This is what they say, right? Devote more time to caregiving and housework, right? Richard Fry, Carolina Aragua, Kylie Hurst, and Kim Parker, they wrote this nonsense. They are responsible for these words, right? And today we're going to throw their words back at them. And here are their words. Here are their words. They write in their infinite wisdom. Among married couples in the United States, women's financial contributions have grown steadily, right? Grown. These are the words they use, and we're going to look at those numbers for that steady growth. She says, or they say rather, over the last half century, right? Century, 100 years. So we're talking about a 50-year period. While men remain the main breadwinners in the majority of opposite sex marriages, the share of women who earn as much or as much as or significantly more than their husband has roughly tripled over the past years. You're going to see what they mean by triple, right? So they're saying that men have remained stagnant, right? But women have tripled. I'm going to show you what that tripling looks like. I mean, it is nothing, right? It is absolutely nothing. But she continues, or they continue. I'm going to say she because this is a very feminine article, right? So I'm going to keep referring to the writers as she. This is not to imply, that I'm trying to insult any of the men that contributed to this. It's actually not an article. It's a journal. It's actually well thought out and well researched journal. but they've described it in a feminine pro way that, quite frankly, is troubling, right? They continue to say, in 29% of marriages today, both spouses earn about the same amount of money. They earn about the same amount of money, right? That 29% is going to prove to be an insignificant difference, and I'm going to show you how. And then they say just over half, 55% of marriages today have a husband who is the primary and sole breadwinner, and 16% have a breadwinner wife, right? So that 29%, I believe, is called, is it egalitarian relationship, right? Where it's almost like 50-50, right? Egalitarian, I beg your pardon, egalitarian, right? Egalitarian marriage, yes, sorry, I misspoke there. So here is the definition of egalitarian marriage. Both the wife and husband earn between 40 and 60% of the couple's combined earnings. So, what they're telling you is when they say nearly the same, almost the same, implying that the contribution is almost 50% or equal, what they're telling you is the husband brings in 60%, while the wife or the counterpart only brings in 40. That is a 20% difference. So I meet you where you are, and then I still have to supersede you by 20%. So that 29% where they earn about the same, that's a 20% difference. That is not about the same, right? So you take the 29% and so this is almost 30%. So 60% of that would be, 60% would be 20, right? So let's say 30%. Now you get 20% of the men paying the majority of the bill and 10% of the women paying the minority of the bill, right? So if we split those into two categories where men pay and women pay, and we added to this 55%, right? What comes up is just about 84%. It's just about 84% of the men in relationship paying the majority or all the bills. That's what this number tells you, right? That's what that number tells you, right? Egalitarian means 40-60, right? Out of 30, that's 20% to the men and 10 to the woman, right? You add this 55%, well, it's 29%, so 1% goes over this side, but okay, 55, you get 84%. And this is what brings us to the 16%, right? Let's read it again. Just over half, 55% of marriages today have a husband who is the primary or sole breadwinner, and 16%, only 16%. Remember, they described this as steadily rising, as a steady increase. That steady increase is equal to 16%. This is an abject failure. 16% have a breadwinner, right? A breadwinner wife, I beg your pardon. 16%. This is what they're talking about when the article says that the man spends his time on work and leisure, and the woman does the majority of it. They're talking about 16%. And if you look at that list of things that I mentioned and the magnitude of those tasks that a man must accomplish to just maintain the home, just the outside, lawn care, mowing, edging, fertilizing, watering, planting, weeding, pruning, tending, vegetable gardens, general maintenance, trimming, shrubbing, removing debris, right? To me, these numbers ring true in the sense of how I have digested them. This looks to me like you're folding towels and washing dishes Compared to all that yard work, that I would say is round about 16%. And it rings true in the income disparity here, right? We are at 16% of women. 16%, right? Maybe we could bring it up to 20%, right? Including that 40 that they contribute. But you're talking about 29% only contributing 40%. 16% plus the 10, let's say 26%. 26% of women are paying there and thereabouts, right? And the way they describe this, right? And as we keep reading, you'll see how they just keep embellishing this number to make it sound, the 16%, to make it sound so astronomical, when in fact it means absolutely nothing. Now listen to these words, right? And how pointed they are. They go on to say, even as financial contributions have become more equal, 16% more equal in marriages, the way couples divided their time between paid and work home life remains unbalanced. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? After the list of things, the litany of tasks that I've just described, right? They say this is unbalanced. Listen to this. Women pick up a heavier, oh my God, heavier load when it comes to household chores and caregiving responsibilities, while men spend more time on work and leisure. This is so biased, it is painful. It is painful, right? All that mowing, all that heavy lifting, the gutters alone, the painting, the repairs, all the repairs, right? They call that leisure. They continue to say, these people, this is true for egalitarian marriages where she contributes a maximum of 40%, where both spouses earn roughly the same amount. Roughly implies a close difference. This is a 20% minimum, a consistent 20% minimum. They say roughly the same amount of money. And in marriages where the wife is the primary earner, the only marriage type where husbands devote more time to caregiving than their wives is one in which the wife is the sole breadwinner. Give me a break. Give me a break. Those kids will be running outside in that yard that he has just mowed. They'll be kicking balls against the wall that he has just painted. They'll be throwing things on the roof that he has just repaired, and they'll be breaking the windows that he has just fixed. All the while, he's inside the house doing repairs. And the woman is sitting there saying, why aren't you doing anything? Madness, right? It continues to say, in those marriages, wives and husbands spend roughly the same amount of time per week on household chores. So, over and above paying all or the majority of the bills, up to about 80%. Over and above doing all of the yard work and all of the maintenance, right? Men still do 50% of the chores in the house. So they're still splitting all of her tasks. So he's doing everything that he does and buying the house and buying the cutlery and those damn towels. And he's still got to fold those towels too. He's still got to help you fold those towels over and above all of that. And they call this a heavier load. How is that a heavier load, right? On the one hand, they say it's a heavier load, and then they continue to say at the bottom, in those marriages, right, wives and husbands spend roughly the same amount of time per week on household chores, right? Absurd. absurd. In the rare case, right, that the man is taking care of the house and the other things, and the woman is making some money, the little bit that she does is called a heavy load. But you flip that, and the man still does the same thing, and he still does half her work. This is the absurdity of these people and their biasness, right? These findings, it continues, come from a Pew Research Center survey and analysis of government data. The nationally representative survey of 5,152 U.S. adults was conducted on, it says, January 8th to 24th, 2023, so it's fairly recent, using the Center's American Trend Panel. I think they're just giving credit to where the credit is due. The analysis of government data about opposite sex married couples is based on data from the U.S. Census Bureau and the American Time Use Survey. Here are some key findings, right? So let's jump into those. Far fewer husbands are the sole breadwinner in their marriages these days. Listen to that. Far, implying a great distance, a huge difference. No, we're talking about 16%. 16%. At a maximum, 16%. 20 when bills are split, right? Let's continue. The share of marriages where the husband is the primary or sole breadwinner has fallen steadily in recent decades. Steadily. In recent decades. Driven, in other words, motivated, right? Such powerful words. Driven mainly by the declining share of marriages where the husband is the sole provider. This was the arrangement in 40% of the marriages, in 49% of the marriages in 1972, while today that share is 23%. That's a contradiction. That's a complete contradiction to the numbers that they represented before, right? Because they represented it such that it's a peak of 25%, right? That the women are paying all or most of the bills, right? But I worked it out to a completely different situation, right? Let's continue. Breadwinner wives are still in the minority. That is true, right? Now, listen to this. This statistic is true. Relatively few marriages, 6%, have a wife who is the sole breadwinner. Now they are revising it down to 6% where the woman pays all the bills, where previously they said 16. Now, I may have misunderstood those statistics, but I read them several times and we read them together. But now they're saying it's 6%, right? Where relatively few marriages, 6%, have a wife who is the sole breadwinner, and the wives are the primary breadwinners in 10% of marriages today. Primary breadwinner. In other words, she's not paying all her bills, right? Where's all that boss babe mentality at peaking at 10%, right? It keeps getting lower. When the truth is revealed, it is catastrophic for the economic feminist movement. Catastrophic. They have failed to deliver what they set out to achieve. It continues. The share of marriages where the wife is the sole or primary breadwinner has increased from 5% in 1972 to 16% today, right? So this is that dramatic increase that they're talking about when they say it's tripled. It's tripled from nothing to nothing. And what they say is the men have been consistent. The men have been paying those bills at a consistent rate, right, all throughout. And what's happened is those women who have decided to work will go in and they'll come back and contribute nothing. So it's a very small number of women who are working hard enough or putting in those extra time, that overtime every time in order to bring in enough money to buy a house, to buy a car, to put the kids to school, to support themselves, to support, the husband, and to support the household as a whole, right? These are catastrophic number. There are no boss babes. Where are all the boss babes? Where are all the ones who say they don't need no man? 16% of you? That's nothing. That's nothing. 16% of the women are saying they don't need no man. And this is a movement. This is not a movement. Let's continue. Earnings arrangements within marriages differ by demographics. Among wives overall, black women, or rather women of African descent, those with a 4-year college degree, those ages 55 to 64, retired people, and those with no children are among the most likely to be the breadwinner in their marriages, right? So if you have a degree and you are above the regular bracket, it means you're not going to find a man at your level who wants to deal with you. So you're going to have to find either a younger man or a less economically attractive man, and you're going to have to pay those bills. Along with women who are, near retirement age, that's 55 to 64, right? So, yeah, you're paying those bills. And if you have kids, who's going to pay those bills, right? They're your kids, so you're going to have to raise those kids. In egalitarian and breadwinner wife marriages, husbands spend considerably more time on leisure, I hate that word, activities than wives. Husbands in egalitarian marriages spend about I don't know if that's 3.5 or 3.5 hours more per week on leisure activities than wives do. By leisure activities, they probably mean sitting in your car, bracing yourself for 20 minutes before you come into the house and you get the full brunt of whatever the hell is going on in there, right? Leisure activities. Wives in these marriages spend roughly 2 hours or more per week on caregiving than husbands do because he's outside mowing the lawn, and about 2.5, I'm just going to say 2.5 hours more on housework because he's on the roof fixing the gutters. In marriages where wives are the primary earners, husbands' leisure time increases significantly compared to egalitarian marriages, while the time they spend on caregiving and housework stays about the same. Let's discuss that. When the wife is at work, or you flip the situation, right? When the husband is the work and the wife is the stay-at-home wife, and the kids are at school, those hours, how would you describe those hours if not other than leisure? Right? So what you're saying is in a situation where you are the primary caregiver and you go to work, the husband stays home. And they describe those hours for you as a man as leisure, but for her, it's a heavy load. She's carrying a heavy load. You see, this is the biasness. This is the biasness in the diction and the word choice that I personally don't appreciate, right? But it says here, when wives are the sole earners, the amount of time husbands spend on caregiving and housework does tick up somewhat. It ticks up, just a slight little increase, right? So when you do the housework, the majority of it, it's a tick. But when she does it, it's a heavy load. This is so biased. This is so biased. And then when you pull out the numbers and they peak out as 16%, the heavy load. The public thinks married men and women have different ideas about which spouse should earn more money. About half of Americans, 48%, say most men who are married to a woman who would prefer that they earn more than their wife. So, in other words, she doesn't want to work. She wants you to go and do the work. 48% they don't want to do the work, right? Or let me rather say 48% admit they don't want to do the work. Only 3% say most men want a wife who earns more than they do. And 13% say most would prefer that they had their spouse earn about the same. So ultimately, they just want a richer man to pay all the bills. That's really what that says. And they don't want somebody who earns the same as them. 13% want equality, right? Only 3% are like, yeah, I'll take on that load. That's that 16%. That's where you get that 16%. 3 plus 13, that's 16. The public has mixed views about what most women would prefer. 22% say most women want a husband who earns more than they do. I'd say more than that. 26% say most would want to earn about the same as their husband. Not true. And only 7% say most women want to earn more than their spouse. So I think there's a bit of like social conditioning happening here where women say they want the same amount of money as men do. We want equality, but clearly there's a disparity here. Clearly there's a disparity, and there is such an obvious bias to this article. It really makes it difficult to take it down, you know. But as you can see, what they're showing here is that they will misrepresent those numbers so heavily. By the way, this is the end of the article. There's nothing more. The article does continue in like it shows methodology and how they got to these outcomes and how they came about with this information, the type of research that they did. It's actually quite thorough. It's worth a reading, but I don't think it will help this video here. So, but that would be the end of the edification. But what you can see here, what you can see is a clear disparity in representation, right? Where they clearly downplay all the men's efforts and upplay all the women's efforts or the counterparts' efforts, right? And this is really why you are in the dark dimension, right? This is going to be a consistent theme in your life if you don't get that vasectomy and do the right thing. It's going to be a constant theme in your life. You are constantly going to be undermined and all your efforts are going to be downplayed while the incompetence right next to you keeps getting all the praise and demands it to the point where they are going to start believing their own nonsense and end the relationship and end the marriage and destroy the family just for them to say, well, I need somebody who's going to do more for me, just to get out there. And I promise you, they're just going to find nothing. They're never going to find a man who's going to do all her plumbing, all her electrical, all her air, all her condition, all her lawn, the gardening, the landscape. You know, she's not going to find somebody to do that and pay all the bills and fix the roof and the foundation and the walls and the doors and the windows and the appliances and the washing machines. All of that, you're never going to find somebody to do that for you, all right? It's an insult. It's an insult to hear these people say that, you're not doing anything, you're not contributing anything. Then she's going to turn around and say she doesn't need you just for you to leave her and for her to then sue you for all the things that you used to do that she said she didn't need it, that she said she never needed or wanted. This is the dark dimension. You're going to go crazy. You're going to go crazy, just as frustrated as I was looking at these numbers and then hearing how they describe them. The absurdity of them to claim success and say the numbers have tripled. Tripled. You went to 15% and tripled your score? That's nothing. That's nothing. If you tripled your grades, if you tripled your income, and you were only at 15% of where you needed to be, if a coach team tripled their winning rate and only got to 15% of what they needed, 16% of what they needed, that would be a catastrophe. If a company tripled its productivity and only got to 15 or 16% of what they needed, that would be considered a catastrophe. And these numbers have to be considered the same. The Boss Babe movement has failed. The economic feminist movement has failed. And they failed because they're just not productive. They're not productive at home. They're not productive at work. They're not productive in life. And ultimately, these are the same people who fail at being a housewife. Just think about how ridiculous that is. How can you fail at being a housewife? And then you fail at marriage. Divorce guaranteed. 75% over 10 years. You are going to get divorced. And you are going to get divorced to a lazy person who calls you lazy and incompetent. And you can't correct that. You can't read these statistics out to them and show them that they are only 16% capable. And that 16% is the best among them. This isn't the average one. This is the best, most capable among them. And they have accomplished absolutely nothing. Guys, get a vasectomy. Get a vasectomy before you get caught, before you get yourself caught up with this type of person who's going to use this type of innuendo to manipulate reality and upplay incompetence, right? Only to tear you down when you are the reason they are alive. Men need to know their value. You really need to know your value and you need to appreciate it. And if you're a bachelor and you are not in the dark dimension, I need you to take a moment and be grateful. Go through that list of things. Go through that list of activities that a man has to go through and realize that they're going to define that activity as nothing and demand more. What more is there? What more can there be? There isn't. So now you've come out of the realm of capability in reality, and you've entered the realm of impossibility in delusion. Now you're trying to do things in the house that don't even need to be done. Nonsense that doesn't need to be done, just to prove to someone that you can do the things she needs to do before she has to ask them for you to do them, and then just for you to do them and for her to tell you she doesn't like the way you do them. And then for her to try and do it and mess it up completely. Have you ever watched somebody do something and display sheer incompetence and then turn around and be upset at you that they can't do something? And then when you do it, they say it's nothing. Right? This is the madness that you're going into. Get a vasectomy. Protect yourself from these delusional people, because their delusions aren't going to go away. They're only going to transfer to you. This is the Ancient One, the Bachelor Supreme, with another heartfelt video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your attention. I really appreciate it. Have a nice day.